Hi, hello, welcome back. My name is Amber, and I thought it'd be fun to paint yet another intuitive landscape. This one, of course, focuses on trees, like most of mine do. So I've got my plexiglass. It's a nice and sturdy plexiglass, doesn't bend or warp. I'm adding my 100% cotton paper, taping all the edges down. Thought I might use my Schmincke paints today. I am going to use Black Galaxy or Galaxy Black, and I believe it's Tundra Violet. If you think I'm wrong, let me know, but I'm pretty sure it is. So I am using a mop brush here to play with the sky. I did not wet my paper first. I'm just using a watery down version of this and kind of just playing with the paints and seeing where it goes. Sometimes I'll wet my paper, sometimes I won't. If you're more comfortable with wetting your paper, absolutely do so, because I am adding water. So essentially, you really could. It's not like I'm doing this to get the dry can I talk here? Dry brush effect of not using water or pre-wetting. So it's kind of a personal preference in my opinion. Trying to vary the color here. This is a super granulating color. All those series of, tundras and deserts and what are the other ones? There's about 6 of them, I think, now, of Schmincke's super granulating colors. And I bought these a long time ago. I didn't buy the sets. I don't think the sets are necessarily worth it. I think the colors can be quite similar. So for me, it wasn't worth it. I grabbed them when they were on sale. So they're maybe $6 a tube, which is fine for a 5 milliliter. And I don't use them very often. I don't think that I would either, because I have a lot of handmade paints that I really love. And so these are just ones that I've had for a long time. I thought I would use. I'm packing for Dominican Republic, so I'm trying to maybe not use the paints that I'm going to use on the trip so that I can pack them and, try to prepare myself. So this is Galaxy Black I'm using, and I'm using this as a suggestion of hills, maybe some darker clouds. I'm honestly unsure still at this time. I think I decided right about now it's starting to look like a tree line, so I'm going to go with that. And I took my wet round brush along the bottom and just sort of blended that so it bled into the lower portion of this. Going to go in and darken that up with my round. I switched to a round size 6 by Shimoni. Monica makes beautiful brushes. I really love her brushes. And so I'm just adding some color in there so I get some depth, right? This is far away, but I still want it to have some depth so it just doesn't wash away into the sky. This next layer, though, will be a little bit more darker so that it does create the sense of depth even more, right? So the sky is lighter. That mid-ground hill back there with the trees is a bit darker, and then more darker in the foreground. So again, I'm blending and just kind of playing. I have no reference picture to go from. I'm just kind of seeing where this leads me. I did use a square piece of paper. I don't usually typically go for that size, but it's kind of a fun shape. And so I'm just kind of playing and letting myself be guided by what the watercolor wants to do. And I decided that this little slope right here should come all the way to the front and kind of even add more depth, right? So now we have more like a three layers of depth. And I think 3 is a good number. I think odd numbers do tend to do well, right? Isn't that one of those unspoken rules, or not unspoken, but spoken rules about art always in 3s or something? Or is it design? It's probably design. That's what I'm thinking. So anyway, I'm taking a script liner or a liner brush, anything that you're comfortable with, and I'm making these tiny trees on that very back horizon line or tree line or mountain line or whatever you want to call it. Mountain lion sounds like mountain lion, doesn't it? So anyway, whatever brush you're comfortable with. If you're more comfortable with size 2 or size 4, use that as well. If you're more comfortable using a round giant 10 and it works for you, I just suggest trying all your different brushes to see what does work best for you, because it's always different with everybody. The other thing I will say that does help me out is remembering not to go straight from my pan to my paper, right? It's useful and it's beneficial to take your paint from the pan and put it in a palette so that you can add the water, stir it up, kind of get maybe a variation of your strengths of your pigments, right? Instead of just going straight from your pan every single time, you're going to kind of end up with the same consistency and the same colors often, right? So I do like to mix on my palettes. And if they're dirty, for me, that's okay, because then it creates yet another element of variation in my painting, in my colors that I'm using. And I can see why that might not be for everybody, right? People don't like muddy stuff. People don't like tainted, not tainted, but like, I guess muddy, tainted. They like pure colors. I like the bit of variation you're getting if you're just kind of going with the flow and using whatever's on your palette, or using mixing what you are using straight from the pan onto your palette with the others, and that's okay for me. So right now I'm moving forward with the trees, and I am blending each tree at the bottom so it blends into the land, so it's not just a floating tree. Often you'll end up with floating trees if you don't kind of blend that together. And I did not dry my paper or make it dry in between these layers. I'm just kind of letting the paint be soft and loose. And I think that's helpful when creating a misty landscape. You can also spray your page with a little bit of water if you're wanting to keep a little bit of the water there without, drying it and then putting a ton of more water back on your paper. There's different ways to do it, and there's no right or wrong. Whatever works for you, what you're comfortable with. And I highly recommend experimenting, if you haven't done that kind of thing, using a spray bottle, because it's nice because some of the branches get really crisp and some of them stay sort of blurry. And I think the variation in that really helps with the overall feel of the misty feel that we're going for, right? Or the dreamy fairy tale land type atmosphere in these scenes. And if that's what you want. If you don't, if you want the crisp look to these, that's absolutely fine as well. I do that as well. And you'd want to dry each layer and make sure that you're not painting on any kind of these trees on any kind of wet background. And that's absolutely something you can explore as well. So I just like to give all these options because I don't think anything's set in stone, and there's always different ways to do things. And I think experimenting, exploring, and just reminding you that you have that invitation to do all those things, and you're capable of doing all those things, right? And it really just takes practice. And you can do the same thing 5 times and use 5 different colors and 5 different brushes, and you'll get different results every time. And I think that is part of the beauty of watercolor for me. And also, if you're ever watching these and you're finding my rambling and my speed talking a little too much, just mute me. You can also slow me down. And, there's, again, always options with that too. So, I do a lot of tutorials. So sometimes you're in a different mood, or sometimes it's just not your vibe that day, all the things. And so just remember that you always have options. And, if you want to paint something and you just don't feel like talk that day, that's okay too. Turn on some music. I am looking into doing a few more videos with just music as my background. Right now, everything I'm finding is being charged. My husband's looking into creating some background music for me. So I'm going to see where that goes and play with that idea. I'm not sure where it will or what it will yet until I'm making more of an income. I'm not going to be buying music at this time. So I don't know if anybody has suggestions, or if they've been there, done that, and they know what they're doing. I'd love to hear your suggestions on that. Okay, so I did want to add some darker trees because the other ones so far are pretty, misty and very loose and not distinguished, or not fine detailed, right? So these ones to the left, the paper, I made sure it was a little drier, and I am using more pigment so that I'm getting a better coverage, I guess, a heavier coverage, right? So my paint now is more straight from the pan with very little water, but enough so that it still moves. So it's a slow process sometimes getting that paint just the right consistency, and kind of learning what works for you and what doesn't work for you, right? In different brushes and a different load of water within the brush. So it's always going to be different, or you're always going to have to take that into consideration, what brush you're using, because that makes a big difference, right, on what is coming out of the tip of your brush. If you have a huge belly, you're obviously going to get a lot of water. I do talk about my cloth next to me. I use that cloth often to dab off my paintbrush. I like to roll the belly. So I put my brush horizontal and I roll my belly of my brush on my cloth so that it absorbs some of that water in all the brush hairs. And so you're not just depositing a bunch of water into your painting. So that's something you can play with too. And it's just really fun. I tend to not use the same brushes all the time so that I gain experience and just, time spent learning my tools. And so I like to learn a lot of different tools so that I'm making sure that I'm keeping my options open and learning with different tools so that I can pick up different brushes and be able to paint trees instead of having to have the one brush, the only brush that paints a tree. And, and it's okay if you do. I'm just doing that for my own little self thing. And, it's hard because once you find something that works for you, you want to use it all the time, in my opinion anyway. And so I remind myself that I need to learn with different brushes so that I'm not just pigeonholed. Is that what they call that? Pigeonholed in that? I don't know. Okay, I'm adding some more trees in the front here, and hopefully I end up with an odd number. I've got 6, I've got 8. Come on, Amber, add one more. Nope, I didn't do it. I usually count and make sure. That is kind of weird that I didn't. Okay, so I'm going to add my birds with my Shimoni rigger. This is a very, very fine. It's my favorite brush, and I do have a discount code for those if you want to use it. It'll be in the comment section. After I take off the tape, I realized, you see that cloud on the left-hand side that's right above the tree line? It's a little funny and a little dark. Well, I take a wet brush, which I've dried off on my cloth, so it's not super wet, but I just want to blur that harsh little line out of there because it's a little too much. So I'm not sure if you can tell it made a big difference or not, but you'll see when I hold this up here. Let's see. So see, it's just like a blob. And it's kind of on the right too, but this one's more pronounced. And so it needs to go. So again, I'm just going to take some little bit of water and I'm drying off the brush. There, I showed you my towel so that it's just taking that little bit, this little too harsh in that one spot. So it didn't make a huge difference, but it at least is less, like that spot was really drawing my eye there. So, you know, a little, you can kind of fix things a little bit here and there. Is it the perfect painting? Absolutely not. But did I have fun painting it? I sure did. And I got to use some Schmincke colors that I hadn't used in a long time. And I love these Shimoni brushes. So it was a fun piece and I hope you enjoy it too. And I'll see you next time. Bye.